Welcome to the Free to Be Free portal. In this video, we're going to be talking about the astrology of the new moon in Leo, including Gene Key 31 and the Sabian symbol of Leo 3. I'm Julia Ananda, your host, and I'm here with astrologer and Gene Key guide Margaret Miller. Hi, Margaret.
Hi, Julia. So excited to look at this new moon energy. It's some really powerful energy coming through. And I think that the first thing that I want to do before I share the chart itself is just feel into the energy of new moons in general. Okay. And then what a Leo new moon might be versus an Aquarius new moon or something like that. So the new moon energy is when the sun is conjunct the moon. Okay, so the sun and the moon are together. And so the energy of the sun is infusing the energy of the light of the sun, the essence, the life force is infusing itself with the energy of the moon, which is our emotions and our past memories and our emotional nature in general. And so when those two come together, which they do every month, of course, they provide this opportunity for a new beginning, right? The new moon is when there's no moon visible in the sky, right? And so that it's when we plant, it's the best time to plant gardens, right? Is under the influence of a new moon. If you're to look at the farmer's almanac or whatever, they always suggest the new moon. And that's because it is this energy of the new beginning. And so always that's the case. And we can utilize that energy in our lives, you know, by thinking about what we want to begin. And part of beginnings is always what needs to end as well. And so we can, just kind of go into this with that kind of an idea that new moons are always about new beginnings. And a new moon in Leo, the energy of Leo it's a fire sign, and it's ruled by the sun. Okay. And so Leo is the lion that roars, and that shines like the sun. And so it has this energy of wanting to uh, project the highest parts of ourselves, or the best parts of ourselves, out into the world, and having that confidence and that self-assurance that the lion has, that's Leo energy has. So those are just some basic energies of a Leo new moon. Okay, so now I want to look at the chart itself. And before I start even looking at the astrology here, I'll bring in the Sabian symbol, which is a, a mature woman having her hair bobbed, or, this mature woman going for a new look, a new presentation of herself. And so it is this energy of deliberate self-renewal, like the reinventing ourselves on purpose, reinventing ourselves with purpose. Okay. And to also having the, autonomy and courage to transform our identity, and to really actually transform our public identity, because it really has that energy of, especially when we look at it in conjunction, in reference to this new moon, It's about how we are showing up in the world, and and what do we need to do to show up more authentically? Is there something that we need to change? Is there something that can happen that we need to that that would help us to express ourselves more authentically in the world? Okay, so this is a really powerful energy or influence of this new moon in Leo. And I had already said, this Leo energy does want to project itself out into the world in the most positive light, and has the courage and self-assurance to do that. So that's a really beautiful energy here. So also looking at this, the first thing that I notice as I look at this astrology chart is that Pluto is at 3 degrees, I round up a little bit, at 3 degrees of Aquarius, exactly opposite this new moon. Well, Pluto is one of the most outer planets. We have dwarf planets now that are farther out, but Pluto has the largest orb. In other words, or Pluto is that takes 256 years to move around the astrology chart. So it is a collective energy, much more so than the sun and the moon and Mercury and Mars. Those are sort of called our personal planets, and Pluto is one of the outer planets. So it is dealing with the energies of the collective. And right now, at 3 degrees of Aquarius, Pluto is in gene key 41. And I bring this up for several reasons, because Pluto will be in gene key 41, with just a few exceptions, for the next several years. In fact, it leaves, I think, in January of 2029. Okay, so we're going to be looking and feeling into the energy of Pluto, because it affects all of us. Pluto is death, rebirth, transformation, transmutation. And it really is pulling out the deep, hidden parts of our nature and bringing them up into the surface. And the gene key 41 is the shadow of fantasy, the gift of anticipation, and the city of emanation. And so another interesting thing about it is that gene key 41 is what's called a start codon. So Pluto is in the only start codon in our genetic matrix. And so it in itself is this symbol of new beginnings, right? The 41st gene key being a start codon, Pluto, death and rebirth and transformation and transmutation, exactly opposite the sun and the moon. So how I really like to look at this energy is that while we are transforming in the more collective sense, and while the world is transforming, while we are going through death and rebirth and transformation in the world, we are being challenged to reinvent ourselves to a higher frequency, to something that will represent our future, that will represent who we want to be as we move into this new era, as we move into this new life. Beautiful, beautiful symbol. Okay, so I don't remember if I talked about, I did talk about the woman having her hair just bobbed, but I didn't talk about the gene key associated. I jumped right to Pluto. So I'm going to come back and talk about the Sabian symbol associated with this new moon itself. And so the Sabian symbol, I'm sorry, the gene key associated with this new moon and this new moon's sort of core frequency is the shadow, gene key 31, the shadow of arrogance, the gift of leadership, and the city of humility. And so along with this reinvention, right, of the self, with the Sabian symbol of the the mature woman having her hair bob, this gene key is calling for us to move out of, you know, our arrogance, our thinking that we're better than, or whatever way arrogance shows up in our lives, and move into a truer frequency of leadership by example, leadership that just is, people, that's the leadership of our own lives. For instance, looking at it from the very personal level, just like how are we leading ourselves through our life? And are we someone that, are we acting in a manner that we would want to follow? That we would, if we were looking at someone else and they were behaving the way that we're behaving, or that they live their life in a particular way, uh, would we want to follow them? Right? Would we want to follow in their example? And so becoming that example in our own lives of what we most want to become, and what we most see as the truth of who we want to become. So that leadership energy is, the true leader doesn't want followers. They just collect followers because their energy says uh, that that they have something to offer that's important, and they have an idea of the future that is valid and valuable, right? And so, and at the gift level, leadership never is by force. It is by choice, right? It's by the choice of the people who follow. And it's leading them in a way that shows them how to lead themselves and not need a leader at all. And so this is a really powerful energy as well. And then humility is recognizing, and the leader is also has that humility, right? And the city of humility is recognizing the connectedness of all of us, and that in these human forms we are inherently perfect and flawed at the same time. Our personality structures are flawed, and our but we are perfect, whole, and complete in our divinity, in our connection with each other. And that causes this great acidic frequency of humility. So that being said, these two, right, the opposition to Pluto is this energy of moving between the shadow frequency. It's moving between fantasy, like this fantasizing of what we might be, and the arrogance of thinking that we actually are demonstrating that we actually are that, right? So there's the shadow of arrogance kind of feeds that fantasy, and the shadow of fantasy feeds that arrogance. But when we move into the gift level, that anticipation, that anticipation of what we can become fuels that energy of leadership that says, I'm going to embody and I'm going to behave in a way that emulates this energy of the future human, or the future that we desire, right? And and then at the Siddhic frequently see that humility and emanation. You begin to emanate those frequencies, and just naturally, without effort, and instead of trying to make it happen. So powerful, powerful opposition there. That's oppositions are always doing that. They're trying to raise both of those energies, those seemingly polar opposite energies, and bringing them both up to a higher frequency. So then I also wanted to bring in this energy of the trine between this new moon at 3 degrees of Leo and the conjunction of Saturn and Neptune at 2 and 3 degrees of Aries. Now, I talked about this, I think, in a previous video, but this conjunction of Neptune and Saturn in Aries is really quite a powerful energy. And I'll break it down just a little bit. Saturn in Aries, first of all, has this energy of restructuring, because Saturn always wants to restructure things. It's our structures, it's our foundations, it's our limitations, but at its highest frequency, it's also our mastery. And so in Aries, Aries is about the self. It's the first degree in the zodiac. It's how we show up in the world, and our personality, and this energy, this drive forward, moving forward in life, and expressing ourselves in that we are an individual. It's an energy of individuation. But when Saturn is here, it's really asking us to again restructure, look at what needs to be restructured for us to be more authentic in our lives, in our expressions. And both of these, Neptune and Saturn, at 2 and 3 degrees of Aries, are in Gene Key 25. Gene Key 25 is the energy of constriction, acceptance, and universal love, right? And so just feeling into that, like, how would we restructure ourselves in a way that brings more acceptance into our lives, acceptance of ourselves, for instance, and acceptance of our situations and our everybody else. Acceptance of everybody else, which if we accomplish that, then we are moving then into that city of universal love, right? So it's a beautiful energy that these two are conjunct in if we bring it to the highest frequencies. So Neptune in Aries is the window to the soul. Neptune is about universal love at its highest frequency, but it's about confusion and illusion and fog and delusion and addiction and so forth when it's at its lowest frequency. It's where we need to work through those energies in order to be able to see through the eyes of love. I always say in my astrology readings to people, Neptune says it's the windows to the soul. So when the windows are clean, we're looking at the world through the eyes of love. When the windows are dirty, that's when we get the confusion and the delusion and the fog and the, addiction and the fantasy, right? Because it has that aspect. But when it's at its highest frequency, we are intuitive, we are psychic, we're clairvoyant, we're telepathic, we're able to feel things and feel life through the heart. So beautiful, beautiful trine. And the trine energy is a flowing energy between this moon and this conjunction of these two powerful planets in the gene key 25, the city of universal love. So I just love that. And one more thing I want to talk about, because there's you can see that through these lines on the chart that there's a lot of aspects here, and but those are the ones I wanted to pick out the most. But another one I want to mention is this trine between Pluto, another flowing, beautiful flowing energy between Pluto and the conjunction of Uranus, who's just moved into Aries, and Sedna, which is the dwarf planet that represents our spiritual destiny. Okay, so spiritual destiny, Uranus is our higher consciousness, our higher mind. It is our rebel nature. It is our uh, autonomy and authenticity. And in the sign of Gemini is really working towards a change in how we communicate, a change in how we learn, a change in how we interact, and many things Gemini, right? It's trying new things. Gemini likes to try new things. And Uranus in this sign is going to bring a lot of energy that way. And in this conjunction with Sedna, it is in the gene key 20, which is the shadow of superficiality, the gift of self-assurance, and the city of presence. Okay, so 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 how can we move out of that energy of superficiality into that energy of self-assurance through our interactions, through our communications, um, through our exploration of this life? And so these two powerful planets bringing even more energy to this new moon and its opposition to Pluto. So I think you can probably see, Julia, why I am so excited about this new moon.
Yeah, very powerful. Very powerful for those of us who are stepping into reinventing ourselves. And that's happening all over the world now as the consciousness is raising. We all are stepping into reinventing who we are and becoming more self-assured and knowing who we truly are.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and that was the purpose of this video, right? Is to really share that because we are aware, we do know that this is happening. It's happening for us individually, and it's also happening to everybody that we know and to the world in general. And so to be able to utilize these energies in our own lives and be aware that the planetary energies are supporting us in this, right? This is something that I am so passionate about in my own work and my own life, is that we can utilize the energies of the astrological energies, the energies, that are expressed through the gene keys and the Sabian symbols, to make these changes and to align ourselves with the universal forces and the energies, that the planetary energies are offering us this wisdom. And we can, so I always say, make a ceremony for yourself for the new moon. It doesn't have to be anything big or fancy. Even if you've never made a ceremony before, just take some time out and think about how you want to reinvent yourself in this case, right? In this new moon, and how you want to bring the energy of emanation and leadership and uh, humility and universal love and all of those things into your life. If that speaks to you, make a ceremony for yourself.
Yeah. So this new moon is on July 24th.
July 24th at 12:11 p.m. Pacific time.
Okay. So if we were to do a ceremony, does it matter if it's a few days before or a few days after? Like this energy, what time period does it
Yeah,
cross?
that's a great question. And the way that I've always, well, the way that I was taught, but also the way that I've always felt it, is that the new moon energy, you can do a few days before, or a day or so before, and even a few days after the new moon. It doesn't have to be exact on the day. I like to do it as exact as I can because it just, it's fun to me
Yeah. Yeah.
to be
Right.
right in the thick of it. And so on the full moons, uh, I usually say it to people who ask that question, do it for the few days before the full moon, because the energy is building up to that full moon, and then the energy begins to wane as the as the as the full moon passes. So if you want to be in, but you still could, like if you miss it by a day, still do the ceremony,
Yeah.
right? Still do that for
Yeah.
yourself.
And for the new moon, when you feel into this new moon, which of the elements do you think we should bring into our ceremony?
Well, I would definitely bring in the fire element if possible, but because it's fire season in so many places, I hesitate to say that, in some ways. But if you can, just imagine yourself uh burning up the old, or being enveloped in the light of consciousness, in the flame, in the fire of consciousness, or, you know, invoke. I always invoke all of the elements and all of the directions. That's just part of my practice, is to bring in the elements and the directions into any ceremony that I'm doing. But I would, I, you know, I would maybe, even if you could burn a piece of paper with your intentions, or um, yeah, just bringing that fire element, because it is a Leo new moon, and that is the element that's being expressed.
Okay, perfect. Margaret, thank you so much for empowering us and encouraging us to jump into the energies that are all around us and that are pushing us forward.
You are so welcome. Yeah.
Yeah. And for our audience, please let us know in the comments what ceremony you're going to do, what intentions you're seeding in this new moon, and how you're reinventing yourself. Thank you all very much for being with us.
Thank you.